You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by tvobsessive.com.
Hello, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast. This is episode 16, and my name is Ryan Kirksey, writer, contributor for tvobsessive.com. And today, once again, I'm joined by Caemeron Crane, the executive editor for tvobsessive.com. Considering what we're talking about today, Caemeron, when was the last time you wore a suit or had a drink at work?
Oh, I mean, I've been working from home, so I haven't had a drink. I haven't had a drink. Well, I mean, okay, no, so not that. I don't know when the last time I wore a suit was.
I've worn a suit pretty recently. I mean, I'm in the office a lot, so I mean, semi-recently, but it's been a while since I snuck a drink at work.
Yeah, right. I always think, I mean, Mad Men, they're drinking, they're
A
smoking,
lot.
they're drinking and smoking, doing
Oh,
advertising.
the good old days. The good old days.
Absolutely. I mean, but also not. Um, yeah, so we're going to talk about Mad Men today. We're going to talk about season 4, episode 7. The Suitcase was one of my choices for standout episodes, or carved in the Mount Rushmore of. I was thinking that, Ryan, also, like, we're each choosing 4, and we're not going to overlap on purpose. So
That's right. That's right.
like, whatever. So
I mean, theoretically, right? They could go replace a face on Mount Rushmore because they really wanted to, right? I mean,
we're gonna have like a Janice face Mount Rushmore. We're gonna do both sides of the mountain with four episodes on each side, or something like that.
That works.
Yeah. So we're gonna dig into that in the latter half of the pod. First, as usual, you want to talk about some things that have been going on this week in the news. It's October 3rd. What caught your eye this week, Ryan?
Yeah, well, we're starting to see results of the writer's strike officially coming to an end, and some things coming back to normal. A couple things that I think we'll touch on here. Number one is that the first things that come back are the talk shows. A lot of the 4 big late night guys came back or are in the process of coming back this week. Daytime talk shows are coming back. And then I think this has sort of spurred a SAG-AFTRA meeting happening very soon. So which one of those you want to touch on first?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the SAG-AFTRA, I think they're meeting. I think they have met yesterday. Today's Tuesday, so I think they met on Monday. I don't know if they're meeting today, but it's like they're going to meet again at least. So maybe they are meeting today, and hopefully there's some movement on there. At least my fingers are crossed that, given that the WGA came to a deal, or the PTB came to a deal with them, that provides a framework, and this will go pretty fast. But who knows?
Yes.
The late night talk shows, cool. Yeah, I realized John Oliver came back, and I generally do watch that one, but I'm so out of the habit I haven't watched it yet. And I think I did read he was talking about the strikes and things like this. So it's a weird middle space because the actors are still on strike. They cannot go on these shows to promote their projects, which is often a lot of what happens on these talk shows. They can, as I understand it, theoretically go on the show and not talk about their projects, which might happen some. I think I saw a list of upcoming guests on these shows, and Bob Odenkirk was on there for one of them. I don't remember which
Bob
one.
Odenkirk. Okay.
I don't remember which one, but like Bob Odenkirk may just well go on and talk about the strike. That might be what happens there, and but they've got some musicians, and you can have other types of celebrities and whatnot. And get that going again, and the writers are back to work. Did you have the chance to look at some of the details of the deal the WGA got?
I did look at some of those details, and I was most curious about obviously the parts related to the AI, right? So there's a lot of pay structure stuff, pay compensation, writers' room sizes, but there was a good amount in there about not only the use of, I guess, prohibiting for the most part the use of AI generated content to script a show, but also if writers are brought in to work on a show, they must be informed ahead of time that they're being given content that was produced by AI, which I don't understand how they're getting away with any of this stuff. But I mean, obviously, all collectively bargained. There was just very, very interesting things that certainly a few years ago we wouldn't even have thought of.
Yeah, because this AI so-called is so kind of fresh still,
Yeah.
But I thought the protections in there seemed pretty good. AI cannot write,
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of a tagline on it, but I don't know. It's out there. People want to look into it. I would recommend, like, the WGA themselves put something out. Go look at that. That's what I did. Speaking of AI, that we were talking right before we came on here with the Toy Story football, which I guess you didn't watch. You weren't even aware of it.
I was not aware of, and I don't know how I missed it, but somehow I have I was totally oblivious to the AI generated Toy Story football game that was running parallel to the Sunday morning game in London.
Yeah, so maybe other people are too. We can still talk about this briefly, but so if people don't know what they did on Sunday morning, there was a football game in London, Jaguars versus the Atlanta Falcons, and they did a simulcast that was in the style of Toy Story. I said, we were mentioning AI, that was heavily involved in animating this, second to second, and apparently it wasn't perfect or anything like that, but they had like computer chips in the shoulder pads of the players, and I don't know how I feel about this. On the one hand, it seemed kind of cool in a way, and on the other hand, probably a grumpy old man and like, it's using AI. How do you feel about this?
I was going to ask you, is this in any way poor taste at just sort of what's going on right now? Is this Disney saying, hey, we could even replace the athletes on the field if we wanted to? I don't know. This is sort of a stick it in the side of people that are fighting for these rights, but I just found it to be a little bit odd in the timing.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings, I think, because I've spent so much time recently, in particular, being kind of angry about abuses of this technology. But I'm not entirely sure this is one of those. Like, I think maybe this is a fun, nifty little thing that we could do with it. And I don't know that it's not stealing jobs from human beings. There's no way on earth you could have human beings animate
Yeah.
On the fly like this, really. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I prefer give me the Nickelodeon like slime cam instead of the Toy Story animated football.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do this more. It's just like kind of a gimmick thing, but hey, I saw some people saying like their kids were really into it, and maybe it's like getting kids into football, and okay, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I land. Okay, I guess, but I
Yeah.
wasn't interested in watching it either. I just don't know that I have a strong objection to what they were doing, really.
Yeah. I have a hard enough time waking up early Sunday morning to watch a regular NFL game, even though I love it. So I'm probably not going to wake up and watch a Toy Story animated version.
Oh, right, because it's even earlier for you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they should. Why do they should play these games later?
I don't know.
They want to put it on in the like super added early window.
Yeah.
So for me, it's 9:30 a.m. I'm realizing for you, what, 7:30?
Yeah. I think 8:30 for me. Yeah.
That's too early.
Yeah. I think there's something we're getting way in the weeds here, but I think there's something in the agreement about these games overseas will be put in as an island game, not prime time, obviously, but an island game that they can be watched by themselves.
Yeah, it probably is in there, but I don't know, man. I know I'm a grumpy old man, and we'll move on if we're boring people, but I constantly think too much football. There's a game every Thursday. Too much. Get rid of those Thursday games. So put all the games on Sunday and one game on Monday.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I have time for. But okay. What else we have in the news here?
Interesting reboot news this week on a couple of different fronts. Let me start off with this news for making the rounds here about the show Blossom. I know this was your favorite show growing up, right? We've talked about that at length.
Whoa!
Right? You love Joey Lawrence. But to have the star of this show, to have Blossom herself come and say, we want to reboot it, but we're not going to reboot it as a sitcom. We want to bring in sort of these deep issues, alcoholism, divorce, grief, and rebooted as something else. Is anybody going to watch that?
I mean, all I can say is I'm really curious.
Yeah.
But apparently they've been trying to get this going for a couple of years or so, I read. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's probably part of the holdup. Like, hey, we want to reboot Blossom. And execs go, oh, great. You mean
Yeah.
like the reboot of Frasier? They go, like, kind of, but
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't know. I mean, like, I'm kind of there for it. I'm kind of
Yeah.
intrigued, at least it would be something sort of novel, as opposed to some of these that seem to be instead just kind of trying to do the same thing without motivation. Like, what's up with that reboot of Night Court?
Yeah.
Just why? Just why does it? I mean, I think it's fine, but
Yeah.
why does it exist? Like,
Why?
it
Why?
has
Because
no,
two people from the original cast agreed to come back and do it. That's why it exists.
yeah, just like a money grab. People watch it, and
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose that's fine, but it just seems bald faced. Like, there's not really any artistic impetus for the
Yeah.
Night Court reboot. No offense, but it
I,
does seem like
yeah.
she does have one here, which is kind of intriguing to me.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall that pitch meeting. Yes, same thing you're saying. It's like, so what comedy writers are you bringing in now that the strike is over? Well, we're thinking more like um the This Is Us show. We need get those guys and come in and write this show. Just I mean, hey, like you said, it's a novel idea. I'm probably gonna check it out just because it's not gonna be your cookie cutter Frasier or Night Court or the one we're about to talk about here that might get rebooted. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. And runs in parallel, but also in contrast to this rumor that's come out that there's supposedly going to be a reboot of The Office, or at least someone's working on a reboot of The Office, originally with Greg Daniels.
Yeah, I don't understand this at all, because I don't think it is originally with Greg Daniels, even because it was originally a British show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to double check who. I mean, that was Ricky Gervais. Was it Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant writing the British show? I don't know.
They wrote the British show. They served as quote unquote executive producers for the American version, right? So they're supervising things. But yeah, very much a Greg Daniels product once it came over here.
Yeah.
But this is still speculation, but kind of the, I guess, most smoke we've had on it in quite some time.
Yeah. Speaking of what is the impetus for doing it other than dollars?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And my question would be, are Steve Carell and John Krasinski, who are now obviously mega stars, coming back for this thing, right? Even Rainn Wilson and Jenna Fisher, are they coming back for this thing? Or is this we're going to focus on the other folks? Even Mindy Kaling or any of these folks, do they have any desire to come back and do this, or is this sort of a watered down cast? I mean, I don't know the answer to these questions, but it's what are they hoping it looks like?
I read this one as a reboot, not a revival, but maybe I'm wrong. The Blossom one would be a revival, technically, right, with the same actors and things like this. But this would be a reboot, which would mean, I think, that they would just be doing The Office over again with entirely new people. And maybe some of those old stars would make a cameo or something. But
it kind of struck me as, I mean, just a straight reboot. I can tell you right now, I would not watch. It sort of struck me as, how this what was the show that came out on Netflix? Fuller House. Remember that?
Yeah.
It came out with a couple of the kids as the stars, and then every once in a while Bob Saget and John Stamos would come and make cameos. That's sort of what it struck me here. But yeah, if it's just a straight reboot with new characters, no, I'm not gonna watch that.
I mean, it's also it's The Office is kind of fascinating to me. We're talking about the British version, which is fairly short, and then the American version, which could not sustain the idea of the boss being so unlikable. It was like the very forces of television, and American television maybe in particular, move things in the direction of Michael becoming more and more likable, more and more sympathetic. So it's like we already saw the arc of how that would play out in a way, and then what so it's almost like what is the premise, because the original premise was, okay, working in an office sucks, and
Yep.
particularly when you've got a narcissistic, incompetent boss, right?
Yep.
And like, I don't know.
I
We'll
mean,
see. We'll see what
yeah,
happens.
I agree. There's plenty of, it's funny and it's set in office shows out there, right? You can obviously watch The Office, you can watch news radio, you can watch a lot of different things. I don't understand if they're just going to try to absolutely beat for beat reboot this with a, you know, with a quirky, cringy boss again. But then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, you can still watch The Office.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, what's going on here? I was going to say it wasn't that long ago, but even if it was, like, I also
Yeah.
watch I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? Um, so, do you want to talk about Naked Attraction?
Yeah, I gotta find out. I gotta put you in the lie detector. How many episodes of this have you watched, Cameron?
I've not seen any. I just heard of it the other day when I saw it was coming to Max.
I uh I also have seen 0 episodes of this, but I have small children in the house, so there's more of an incentive for me to not accidentally have this on. But this is I'm just blown away that this exists. You want to give us a summary of what this show is?
I mean, I guess it's a dating show, but the people are naked. I don't know. I mean, I don't know a ton about it.
Yeah.
I mostly saw, I think it's a British show, and I saw a number of people making comments like, how kind of puritanical Americans are because we find it
Hmm.
shocking. And okay, fair. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, is it? I don't know. Like, does it appeal to the prurient interest? Because you've got people nude for some
Yeah.
reason. I don't
Well,
know.
if you're, so inclined, it is on Max. There are no shortage of think pieces out there as to, should this exist, how this works, who it benefits, if you, whatever your heart's desire for this show, you can go find some analysis on it. But yeah, if you're interested in a new spin on dating shows where they pick people just based on their nothing but their naked selves.
But I don't know if it is that though. See, now I'm getting so curious. I almost feel like I have to take the homework assignment to
Yeah, we're gonna put you on
watch a
assignment.
little bit of Naked Attraction and report back on it or something. Um, Part of my hangup is I'm not terribly interested in the dating shows in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, um, anyhow, another news item, and this can say that reading today, Jonathan Majors is going to be in Loki, the second season of which premieres in a couple days on Disney Plus. That they didn't reshoot anything, they didn't revise anything. I don't
Yeah,
know how much he's in it to begin with, but that's how much
this
he's
was
in
an
it.
interesting piece of news here, and we'll be sure and post a link to this. But an interesting piece of news, yeah, as Loki is scheduled to come out on Thursday, October 5th, something that I'll be watching and writing about for the site. There was this big question coming in. Obviously, the MCU has set up Jonathan Majors as this sort of keystone villain for the years ahead. There's even a movie with his villain's name in it scheduled for 3 years down the road, right? So that he is in long-term plans. But after these allegations of domestic abuse and some onset things that have come out, so this question of what would happen with him. So this article that you're referencing here says that yes, he's in the show, which we knew that because he's been in some pieces of the trailers, but they did not add, remove, edit any of his pieces in this new season of Loki. The way I read it, it seems like they just didn't want to rock the boat anymore that's been rocked already with him in terms of what the future is going to be. But there's no decisions or definitive direction on how he will be used in future projects. Right. I guess with how they finished the season, the strike, and sort of how they were able to work or not work on this, they decided to just let it ride with how he's in there, which is going to be a decent amount because, I mean, he is a draw or has been a draw. But what they do with him going forward is still remains the major question. And this in this piece, nor does any other piece really answer that yet.
Yeah, I don't know. The allegations are pretty serious.
Yeah, they are.
Of course he says he's innocent, and I think the article that I was reading had a, comment from his lawyer and things like that. But it's pretty serious allegations. There's a domestic abuse, strangling her and things like this. I mean, it's and I mean, I guess fair enough that they're saying, well, this isn't resolved. Perhaps he is innocent, and we're gonna not change things and let the legal process play out. Which
And I don't.
all of which feels very like 1990s to me. Whereas for the past few years, it's been like, no, we're gonna make a final season of House of Cards, and Kevin Spacey isn't going to be in it. Just pulling the ripcord of getting rid of people.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've seen some of these things that have come out. So there have been videos that have leaked on social media, leaked quote unquote, with like John Majors out in public, like breaking up a fight and being really nice to people who are looking for an autograph, right? So just sort of this PR campaign that's going on around about him right now. Just clearly trying to position himself as a good guy, as these trials are going to begin sometime in the next few months. But yeah, this is a messy thing that, Marvel can make a decision to recast him, but I just think they're waiting for this to play out before they make that call.
Yeah. Which again, maybe that's fair enough. I'm a little disturbed by it, if I'm perfectly honest. But I don't know. Hopefully the show is good. And we'll go from there and see what happens in terms of the allegations against him and how this all plays out. Right.
I will say, for those that are curious, season 1 was quite good. Probably, I don't think this is not a hot take. It is definitively the best MCU show that exists. Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson as a pairing are incredible together. Add in Jonathan Majors, whatever you feel about him, and then this season also adds Ke Huy Quan after his Academy Award-winning performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once, and you've got a good crew for the show. So we're going to see it starts on Thursday.
Well, yeah. Let's see what else. You've got the finale of Ahsoka coming up.
Yeah, Ahsoka. It is, that plane is going to land one way or the other. It's there's some turbulence ahead. We'll see if they can avoid it or not. Yes, Ahsoka finale tonight, Tuesday night. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, so we haven't seen this yet, but there's a lot of things I think that they still have to do in this finale. I will be writing on this for the site coming up in the next day or so, but it's something where this plane is certainly going to land. We'll see how much turbulence happens along the way between now and then, but it's a show where they are setting up clearly what's going to happen in future shows, in future movies, things that have been announced. Characters are being positioned in places that almost, in a way, and I'll save some of this for the recap, but you have to think about sort of how you feel about the stakes of this show, knowing what's been announced, where these characters are going to go in the future, right? So there's not going to be a finality to a lot of characters, there's not going to be a finality to a lot of the stories, because we know some of the things that are coming. And they also are at a point where they've got a difficult decision to make. This is, not certainly a spoiler for anything on the show, but one of the characters on the show has passed away since film wrapped.
The actor, right? Ray Stevenson.
The actor. Yeah,
which is a bummer. I always liked Ray Stevenson.
And he is truly phenomenal on this show, and one of the more mysterious, interesting characters that they're setting up in a very good way. So I wonder what this finale will do. I fear that it will position him as something very, very interesting story that they won't then be able to continue. But yeah, they've got some tough decisions to make. But this is very much I think a setting the stage show. So I'm curious where the finale ends up. But that happens tonight.
Well, yeah, no, I like Ray Stevenson. It's a bummer that he passed away relatively recently.
Just back in May, actually.
Yeah, so that's a shame if we kind of cuts off things. No, let's get to Mad Men. I was thinking about mentioning Detroiters. I guess I just did. You ever watch Detroiters?
Never.
Do you know what it is?
I have no idea what Detroiters is.
It's an older show. It was on 2 seasons on Comedy Central and got canceled. It's Tim Robinson of I Think You Should Leave fame, and with Sam Richardson, who people might also be familiar with. And it's kind of like a sitcom sort of thing. They have an advertising agency in Detroit, which is,
there's your segue.
I've been kind of I've been slowly watching that, and I was watching an episode or two this week, and then I thought, well, I could mention that as something I'm watching, and then we talk about Mad Men,
Yeah.
which is like totally different in its tone and style. And on its writers, they're doing things like they're making these low budget advertisements for local wig companies and stuff like that. You know?
I was say, are they wearing like, instead of suits and hats, they're wearing like Dickies and working on cars and stuff?
I mean, they're not usually wearing suits. Yeah, they're usually just dressed casually, and but it's pretty funny. Do you enjoy I Think You Should Leave? Have you watched that? Or
I have seen some of that. Yes, found that quite good.
so there's some similarity to the humor, I think, with Tim Robinson of it all. But okay, so we'll get into Mad Men, and so first we'll take a little break as per usual, and then on the other side of this, spoilers are on the table for Mad Men. I guess potentially through this episode, season 4, episode 7. I'm going to avoid bringing in things that happen later. Ryan hasn't seen the whole show,
and I can't spoil things beyond this episode. So,
so I'm not going to talk about like the finale of the series here.
Oh, okay.
I'll hold off on that, and then we'll spoil it for Ryan. I think this episode stands alone pretty well, actually. We talked about some other, some bit about the context and the background. I'm sure we'll come in, but yeah. So I'll hold off on spoilers for anything that happens after this. But definitely spoilers on the table for the Suitcase and anything that happened in the previous, in the previous 3.5 seasons of Mad Men before this. So, okay, as per usual, we'll take about 10 seconds and see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to talk about Mad Men, The Suitcase, one of my selections for my Mount Rushmore of all-time great television episodes. This one is on a lot of other people's lists I've seen, whatever that's worth. But I think it's pretty great to remind you, presuming you have seen it. This focuses on Don and Peggy, really. There's some other stuff that occurs on the margins. And at the beginning, before we finally kind of spend most of the episode between Don and Peggy, they're working on the Samsonite account, right? Thus, the titular suitcase, I guess, is the Samsonite suitcase. And in the background of this, it's May 25th, 1965. One of the things I always loved about Mad Men was how good they were at working in some of these historical details. And I actually used to read The Gothamist, this publication in New York City, would put out articles fact-checking the history of Mad Men. They had a line to the New York Public Library. And over the course of Mad Men, they got virtually everything right.
Oh, wow.
Give or take a little cake box that was the wrong color. But seriously, the Economist is like, that would not have been pink. Like, as you will. That's later. I'm sorry, that's a spoiler for later in this series.
Now it's ruined.
No, but here it's May 25th, 1965, the night of the second fight between Muhammad Ali, often referred to in the episode as Cassius Clay. Read into that, I think, meaningfully in terms of the characters and what's says about them, and Sonny Liston. No, I mean, I don't know, a number of things I want to hit here on here, but again, this was my choice, so I guess I want to kick it to you, Ryan. I mean, how do you feel about the episode? How did it land for you?
Yeah, so I did really enjoy this episode, and my, just to refresh my background with Mad Men, is I had finished not long after Real Time. I'd finished about 2.5 seasons of Mad Men. I can't remember the circumstances that led me to fall off from it, but I've not picked it up since. So, coming in, I'm familiar with the characters, familiar with sort of the theme of the show and the backdrop of the show, but have nothing in terms of actual lead up context to this episode. Told you before we got on here, was able to follow it just fine because it's a really great or standalone episode, and some of the character references, some of the character exploration, and some of the stories that are there. And I loved the backdrop of the boxing match, or how it relates to the story. But I was curious to ask you, having seen some of these episodes, not all of them, what is it about this one that makes it your favorite out of the series?
Oh man. Well, I mean, I guess it's just that I think that in a really meaningful way, the relationship between Ton and Peggy is central to Mad Men. It's not a romantic relationship. But it's a professional relationship, but it's also a personal relationship. It's nuanced. It's complicated. He did kind of give her a shot to write advertising. She starts out the series as a secretary, right? But on the other hand, I don't know, he doesn't always treat her well. This is like quintessential, I think, to their dynamic is what you get here. And if you did take it forward to the end of the series, which I said I won't do, I think there's a real way in which that relationship structures the show. And I mean, I guess I also think one of the things that really comes out in this episode is how deeply flawed Don Draper is. Particularly when you start out the series, potentially you could be like, oh man, Don Draper, he's slick.
Yeah, he's got everything.
Slick and smoking his cigarettes, and men want to be him and women want to be with him. But no, I mean, he's deeply flawed, and he's a bit of an asshole.
Yeah,
honestly. But like the fact that he is that, and then also charming, and the complexity of his character, and I think also the complexity of Peggy's character, and then the interactions between them. I mean, this episode is kind of small. There's some other scenes around it, but a lot of it is in just the dialogue between Don and Peggy. And
so I was going to ask you what I recall. Again, this is years ago, but I recall, obviously, they had a relationship, Don and Peggy did, in the first couple of seasons that grew out of a professional, sort of their professional time together. But it seems to me that Peggy had much closer relationships with others. Like Pete, obviously, she had I remember the storyline where she had the baby, right? She's trying to cover that up. Did the relationship between Don and Peggy, has it grown some since the first two seasons to now? And I guess this may relate to a subsequent question, which is, this was unfamiliar to me because this is not Sterling Cooper, right? This is not the first 2 or 3 seasons at agency. So something has clearly changed, right? Maybe that's affected the dynamic of their professional and their personal relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we can hit on that. I don't know if it's super important. By this point, it's Sterling Cooper Draper Price.
Okay.
And I think that's the end of season 3 when they pull off their kind of takeover move.
I see. Okay.
They were gonna get, I forget all the details here, but it was like they were gonna get bought out, and then they it turns out Don doesn't have a non-compete clause.
Okay.
I forget all the details. The stuff with Duck, there was some stuff that fit into in the background too, because Duck used to work there, and I mean he made a power play
yes,
on the other side of that business move, as I recall. So yeah, but I think the more important thing to this episode, in terms of what you're asking, with Don and Peggy, I mean, yeah, I think their relationship grows and develops. But let's go back to one of the things you mentioned, because it does get a callback in this episode in a very naturalistic way, which is Peggy had an abortion.
Yeah.
And Dawn was the only one who went to go see her afterwards.
Yes.
Right. But she mentions here that because of that, her mother thinks that he must have been the one who got her pregnant and hates him. Right.
Yes.
But we're not clearing this up. You know what I mean? For all these mores surrounding it and all of that. And Dawn doesn't even know that it was Pete.
I see. Okay.
Right. I think that's kind of evident in the scene. He says, "Do you know who it was?" She said, "Of course I do." Right. Yeah. But part of what I love about their relationship is there is a level at which, for all his flaws, Don gets it, as it were, if that makes sense, right? And
Mhm.
he doesn't do things like ask, well, who was it? Yeah, no, that's none of his business. He
Yeah,
understands
yeah.
that's none of his business, right? When Duck shows up and he's all drunk and he's like, Peggy, I can't live without you, baby, and all of that. Peggy comes back into the room and she's like, I don't know why I hooked up with him, you know. And Don's like, don't apologize. You don't have to explain anything.
Yeah.
Again, this is like sort of, it's not there's a way in which Don approaches a number of things very much without judgment, you
Yeah.
know. Um and so even though there's something fraught about their dynamic, I think there's also a level at which they connect with one another, you know, and Don is willing to give Peggy a chance, but he believes in her as a creative
Yeah.
talent also. You know, I think this is one of the notes. How did they put? Yeah, one of the notes that I made was that he does know her and he respects her, but he doesn't express it,
Yeah.
right? So you get the famous line, "That's what the money's for."
So I was gonna ask you about that scene because I completely agree. It seems as though he's got a tremendous level of personal and professional respect for her. Clearly, he's put her maybe in a time or in a decade where there was a lot of professional sexism, and she would have normally not gotten that opportunity. He's put her at the level of some of these other guys that are running these ad campaigns. But is that conversation where he's just really trying to drill into her what she needs to be pushing yourself, working harder, you do this for the money? Is that sort of a, I think you can be better, or is that more of a, you need to understand your place in this hierarchy?
I mean, I think it's, to me, it's important to get how Don is wrong. I mean, he's not wrong, but he's being an asshole,
Yeah.
you know. That she's saying she has these ideas. He never expresses appreciation. He never says thank you, right? And he yells,
Yep.
that's what the money's for. And this is part of what I think is interesting, is that kind of seeps out into the world and gets in meme context and things like this. But in
Mhm.
the context of the episode, that is him being like devastatingly mean, you know. And I think right after that she had stormed. That's when she stormed out of the room. I think,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
But she doesn't. So this is what I didn't understand. And maybe there's, again, other dynamics at play here. Even after that, she doesn't leave to go to this dinner. I guess it's her boyfriend is set up for her. So there's something there that keeps her drawn to Don. And like you said, it's not a romantic thing. It's not something like that. It's more of a, I don't know, devotion to the belief of what they're doing. Just we're trying to figure out what's that motivation there.
Yeah, I mean, it's about the work, it's believing
Yeah.
in the work, you know. And I think that they share that, which is, you know, we're in the context of creating advertisements, which
Yeah.
at a step of remove, I don't know what I would say about, but there is this question about the creativity behind it. And I think that's a big thing at play here. You know, at one point, I think when they're in the diner, Peggy says something like she's get tired and she can't figure out the difference between a good idea and an awful one anymore or
Hmm.
something. And Don goes, well, they're very close.
Yeah. Very close. Yep.
And I think it's a belief in, you know, and when he yells at her, it's like, well, maybe you were working all day, but you didn't give me anything good. You work for 10 seconds if you give me something good. There's this real belief in the creativity, and when you hit the right idea, you know, when you see it, and all of that's at play, you know, in the context of advertising. I think they do connect at that on that level. Like Becky believes that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like in the end, when he finally does land on an idea, she's the one that he trusts to take it and sort of let's polish this up and finish it. And maybe I have the wrong read on that, but it's almost like we've fought this battle together. You're going to be the one to help us take this over the finish line.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's also partly her job.
I see.
You know, like Dawn is the head of creative, and then she is the head of the Samsonite team.
Yeah.
Um,
So my last exposure to her, she was a copywriter, right? She was the words person. So I assume that's sort of her primary role still to this day.
I don't recall exactly where we're at, but I believe at this point she's above that. Like when
Okay.
you see these scenes with her and the guys,
Yep.
she's in charge.
She's in charge.
Yeah,
And then I noticed
of that group.
that when I think it's when Duck presents her with a little gift and he's got a business card. I guess he's trying to entice her with this card that lists her as the creative director. I guess giving her more responsibility than she has now.
Yeah, I mean that's offering to make her Dawn. That's
Yeah.
offering to give her Dawn's job at this agency that he's fantasizing about creating. What do you think of that scene? The like quick downhill arc of Duck in that scene. This is also really striking to me. He starts
Yeah.
out really confident, and then he's just
I that was the one. Well, I'd say there were many scenes where I wish I had a little bit more context, but that was one where I thought, man, I really wish I understood what the background was between Duck and Peggy, because he's a sloppy drunk mess, just thinking about the prospect of needing to get her back, or what has happened between the two of them to put them both in this place.
I mean, as I recall, they just kind of hooked up one time. They
Okay.
had a little dalliance. They had a little affair. You know what I
No.
mean? It wasn't like a big thing, and then it's really Duck being obsessive
I
more
see.
than anything. You know, and clearly he's not in a good place. You know, he's getting drunk. He's like pinning his hopes of salvation on Peggy. You know, and that's another, I think, running dynamic in this episode is how the various men around her are viewing Peggy,
Mm.
and including Mark, her boyfriend, who she breaks
Yeah.
up with ultimately. Talk about that a little bit. But you know, all of them. It's not that Don's perfect, because there are more problems I want to talk about in terms of, you know, some of these dynamics between her and Don, but he knows her, and in a way that all these other people keep showing her they don't know her.
I see.
You know, like as you jump to the thing with Mark, I mean, the man has a point. What are you doing? You're staying late at work. Can't you just tell him that it's your birthday and that you have to go? You know, maybe she could have, but I think the biggest thing in her mind ends up being that he arranged this surprise dinner with her mother and her sister, like her family and everything. And she thought she was going to a romantic dinner. You
Yeah.
know, so he
Yeah.
doesn't know me.
What was striking to me about their relationship in particular is, you know, didn't know what to equate it to, you know, whether a husband and wife or more parental relationship, but it's one of these things where they seem to be so strong or have such a connection that no matter what they say to one another, no matter what happens, no matter what conflict comes up, they have the ability to quickly be able to rise above that and say, our relationship, no matter what it is stronger than any of this stuff. Our relationship has moved beyond just we care or don't care what you're doing professionally, to the point where, as you said earlier, he's got this protection mechanism for Peggy that kicks in, right? When Duck comes by, he's got this thing that kicks in that says, no matter what, I'm going to take care of you, even if it seems like, you know, I'm may not be handling you in the right way when it's just you and I. That he has a very, I can't tell if it's parental instinct, whether it's like a older brother, younger sister thing, but he's really got this instinct where he's got to take care of her.
Yeah, he throws the drunken punch.
Yeah.
Doug gets the better
pretty
of
bad.
the drunken fight, such as it is.
Yeah.
Duck definitely gets the better of him. He makes him say uncle. But yeah, I mean, then you know, at the end of the episode, when Don's saying, well, there's another thing to tie in here, but he's sort of lamenting that no one really knows him, you know. Peggy basically says that she does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's totally, paraphrasing the dialogue, because in the background is the whole thing with Anna. This is Anna Draper.
Okay, so this is all this was my biggest question I had for you, was sort of what is the context or background here. I am not familiar with this character who's talking to on the phone, or who Anna Draper is. I'll need some kind of history on that.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I don't remember exactly when various things happen, but do you recall? So Don Draper is Dick Whitman.
Okay.
And he stole the identity of Don Draper when he came back from Korea. Do you recall this?
You're bringing back some memories. So yes,
okay.
I am recalling that.
It's largely in the background.
Okay.
This whole storyline, right? We ultimately find out. So he comes back and he's assumed the identity of Don Draper, who was a real person who he saw die in Korea. And Anna Draper was Don Draper's wife. Not Dick Whitman's wife, Don Draper's wife, the one who died in Korea.
Okay.
Right? And she ultimately tracked him down, and they established this friendship, this relationship, and they stayed married. But it wasn't a romantic relationship. This is like deep, meaningful friendship.
Okay.
Basically. And then I believe they got divorced when Don was going to marry Betty. And then that was okay. And Anna Draper's out there in California, right? And I think it was previous in the season when Don found out that she was dying of cancer.
Okay.
And her niece Stephanie is the one on the phone.
Okay.
At the end of the episode. So basically, in terms of what goes on here in the Suitcase, when Don gets the message that Stephanie is called from California and it's urgent, he knows what that means.
Yeah.
And but he doesn't call her back until like the next morning, and by that point Anna has died.
And so even as someone that didn't have a lot of that background or understand what the relationship was there, it seemed pretty clear to me that he's him not returning that call and then hearing what the reason was for not returning that call. He just, in many ways, is not wanting to face his own mortality, his own sort of sense of having to reflect who he has been, what he's done. I presume, without having a lot of the background, that something has happened between him and Betty at this point. It did not seem that she is in the picture at all. And so he's having to come to grips with who he's been, what he's done, the things that he's been a part of in his past. Is what he's doing important enough, or enough of a thing where he can reflect on who he has been? And is that why he is then pouring into people like Peggy, so that he can give more meaning to what he's doing, as opposed to just creating ads?
Yeah. Well, and it's also when he says that Anna was the only person who really knew him.
Mm-hmm.
There is one level at which that is literally true, because all that Dick Whitman stuff I was talking about, right? Like the person in the world who knew all of that stuff, she's died.
I see.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still think, I'm curious how, if you were lacking that context as you watched it, how effective it was anyway. I mean, I take it you do get the fact that someone close to him has died,
Yes.
the kind of apparition, the vision that he has, and so on. That he's down to Draper, breaks down in tears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did make the connection that whoever it was that appeared to him with the suitcase and the vision, or when he was passed out, was the person that wasn't the person who was on the phone. So that must have been the person who passed away. And that, whether I knew who that person was or not, it was clearly someone important to him. And it's so important that he just couldn't face the reality of that. But also a sense of, is he still someone in the middle of this fourth season that finds that he needs to get the solution to the Samsonite problem first before he deals with those personal things? Is that the priorities in his life, or is that what we're led to believe with, with who Don is here now 3.5 seasons in?
I mean, I wouldn't put it that way. I think yes, but I wouldn't put it that way. It's an obsessiveness.
Yeah.
It's like, it's what's at play when Peggy says something like, it's not my fault you don't have anyone to, anywhere else to be or anything else in your life,
Yeah.
and it like that Dawn is obsessively focusing on this, I think in part to ignore
Yeah.
the I don't even know what word to use, but he doesn't want to confront the death, Anna's death.
Yes.
It's very clear, right? Like, what should Don Draper have done on this day? Like, what should he have done? It's pretty clear. He gets the message from Ida that Stephanie has called. He goes back into his office. He calls Stephanie up. Is Anna still alive at that point? Does she want to say goodbye? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Stephanie said, like, don't worry about it, but she's very kind. So you think, what should he have done? He should have made that phone call, and then he should have gone to dinner with Roger, gone to the fight, and all of that. And it's like he is not doing that. So yeah, I think we can think about, why is he not doing that, and instead obsessively working on the Samsonite account, which Roger points out he has 2 more weeks on, and getting completely wasted.
Yeah.
And holding up Peggy from her plans,
Yeah.
and all of that. And I think it is, to relate it back to something you were saying, there's an attempt on Don's part to find meaning in this work.
I do think I understand, or have been informed in enough of the show to know that there is some sort of redemptive arc coming for Don. I may have that completely wrong, but at least that's what I understand about the show. But at least here in the 7th episode of season 4, he is still putting up the walls of work and drink and avoidance that defines sort of who he is, despite the fact that all these things, I'm assuming his family, Anna Draper, all these other things are crumbling around him, right? It just seems to me that that's what's taking place. Whether or not that's true, and where it goes from here, I'm not sure. But that's kind of the sense that I'm getting.
No, I think that's on the right track.
Yeah,
I and at risk of breaking my promise, I don't really think there's a redemptive arc. But again, I promise explicitly not to talk about the finale of the series.
Okay.
What are you doing? Tempting me to go right to it. Couple other things I wanted to note. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, but I thought it was very interesting how throughout the episode, Don is rooting for Sonny Liston. He says he doesn't like Muhammad Ali. He says, if you're the greatest, you don't have to say it.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't like his whole thing, but the idea he comes up with at the end puts Samsonite in the position of Muhammad Ali in the famous photograph of him standing over Sonny Liston, because he thinks this is a good idea. This works.
And he's rooting for, as I understand it, and I did go back and read a little bit about this fight, he's rooting for someone who their career wasn't over after this fight, but for all intents and purposes, it was over after this fight, right? That he's rooting for the one that is going to fall to this great thing, fall to this thing that's much better, much more, would end up being much more accomplished, and just kind of hanging on to something that would not last much longer. And
right. Yeah. That's the thing, right? And I think you get this dynamic with Don very often. You could set up Liston versus Ali as kind of tradition versus the new.
Yep.
This is a lot of what Mad Men's about, man, in the 1960s, man, that kind of tension. And it's another instance where Don is on the side of tradition.
Yeah.
I as I recall, I think he voted for Nixon in 1960. It's like he's but he's more than willing to co-opt the new. He's
Yeah.
ultimately willing to co-opt Ali
Yeah.
for the sake of the advertisement. And this is where I will just say very obliquely, I promise to not mention the finale, but if you're following me and you've seen it, maybe you can fill it in for yourself. What I would say about the way that Mad Men ends, kind of picking up from this point.
Yeah. I did like the undercurrent of the fight. I mean, obviously this is a incredibly famous fight. What we see there at the end of the episode with him holding the newspaper, probably the most iconic sports photo ever taken. With Ali standing over Liston, telling him, yelling at him to get up, and then using that to finally sort of flip the switch of what he wants to do with this ad. But it created some interesting parallel between what they're trying to do and what happened at this fight, even though apparently this fight was like a minute and a half long.
Well, there's controversy about it too.
Yeah, lots of controversy.
Lots of controversy about the count and and the phantom punch. Like, people didn't see the punch.
Yeah,
that supposedly knocked Liston out. And there were, people can look into this on their own. One more thing I want to tie that into, though, in relation to Don and Peggy, is how, the initial idea they present is Joe Namath, and Don says endorsements are lazy. Well, Don, you're not super far away with this Ali idea.
Yeah.
And also when he presents the Ali idea, Peggy starts saying, like, how do you put this on TV and things like that.
Yeah.
And Don's like, why are you shitting on this? Well, Don, that's what you were doing earlier, right? So, like, it should be fair on the one hand, but on the other, that's not what the power dynamic is. And that's part of the ongoing tension, that's structuring the relationship, I think.
Yeah. I did it, and again, bring it back to the match. Just this reading about this match prompted me to read more about for what boxing was like in the 1960s, and it just defined by chaos, corruption, people fixing things and throwing fights, and just there was no, you may have these things that set up, well, we're going to have a world heavyweight title fight, but really everything surrounding it was just so much chaos, so much disruption that you never knew if this was actually real or something that was not real. Just sort of a backdrop for what are the things that are real and not real for Don. What does he actually care about? What does Peggy actually care about? Right? Well, they seem to care about each other and seem to care about the work.
Yeah. Well, and you're making me think of, I don't know if I can quite bring this out. You just made me think of something, when they're in the bar. Let's go someplace darker. I love that line. But when they're in the bar, they're listening to the fight on the radio.
Yes.
And, then after it's called, people are like, what? No, he didn't, questioning it. And Don says something like, that's what the man said, right?
Yep.
Ali won that. That's what the man said. Like, there's a way in which I think that ties into how Don ultimately kind of respects authority in a certain way and embraces his own authority. Like, when it comes down to it, at a certain point, that's what the man said, right? And with his own idea for the Samsonite ad, he's the boss.
Yes.
Right? And he's decided it's good.
Yep.
And let's take the win, Peggy. Right? Let's move it forward.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do think this is just a great episode of television.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. I found myself being reminded by how well the people in this show act like they are actually living in the 60s in terms of mannerisms and language and things like that. I was shocked a little bit when I was reminding of some of the kind of overt racism, so I was struck by that. But just as you talked about at the beginning, the authenticity of the show, and then combine the authenticity with really just sort of strong development of what these characters seem to be and how they seem to care about each other. I found it to be quite good, even without all the context.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it throws in, it's like casual racism.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess it fits in the historical context. One thing I will say about the show in general is I feel like it got subtler about that for the most part in a way I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Where if you go back and you watch the pilot, it does feel a little bit too like it's beating you over the head with like, remember, it's 1960. We're going to remind you of like, this is, you know, anyhow. Yeah, it's a great show. I mean, watching this kind of makes me want to engage on another Mad Men rewatch myself. I don't know if I'll find time for that, but
yeah, I am probably now going to. I was very inspired by this. Probably going to now pick up where I left off and finish this up now that I've seen it. So it's inspired me to do so.
Definitely worth it. And you know, it occurs to me. So you want next week? We're going to go back to Ryan's selection, and you have chosen Breaking Bad for next week. Is that correct?
Breaking Bad, yeah. So another interesting working relationship between two people. We'll look at Breaking Bad season 5, episode 14, Ozymandias. This is not the penultimate. This is the second to last episode, third to last episode before the finale of that series. Very critically acclaimed episode. I mean, this is, as you said, kind of like Suitcase, on a lot of best of lists.
Yeah, I know which episode this is.
Yeah.
I haven't watched Breaking Bad since it ended. It's been on my list as something I should revisit. So I am really curious to revisit this episode with you next week.
Yeah,
that'll be a good time.
This is one that sticks with you for a lot of ways. There's it is heavy. So yeah, so next week we're going to get into that. We've got 6 more weeks of this to go before we pick up in the end of November with Fargo. So
plan.
All right, so yeah, so next week, Breaking Bad season 5, episode 14, Ozymandias. We will dissect that, and I mean, at that point, you might as well just look at the whole series when there's only 2 episodes after this. So, we've been waiting to finish the show, finish it before.
I've seen Breaking Bad, so we're going again to something we've both seen, and then probably the following week it'll be again like something I chose that Ryan hasn't seen. That's probably also it occurs to me, you know, this is another AMC show. Mad Men's an AMC show, and then Breaking Bad's an AMC show, and I think we're gonna have another AMC show on here before we're done. Speaking for myself, and what's on AMC now? Walking Dead prequels.
13 Walking Dead shows, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate the golden age of AMC. Who, again, props to AMC. They took a chance on Mad Men, right? My understanding of the backstory here is that they were pitching this show all over the place, and AMC was the only one who would make it. So
same with Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad got turned down a few places before AMC picked it up.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Good for them. So yeah, we'll hit
take
that next
chances. Week. Television networks take chances on creative projects, and you'll end up on the TV obsessive Janice faced Mount Rushmore.
That's right.
This is a worthy of reward. Come on, what are you doing?
Who could ask for anything more? All right, we are located at tvobsessive.com. You can find both of our works there on the site. You can find tvobsessive.com on all sorts of social media, except for Threads. Cameron is fond of pointing out no Threads.
Did you see that like big brands have abandoned Threads? Like the
NFL
is not posting on Threads.
Oh, okay. No, I've not seen this. I mean, I haven't
been on the forefront. I know Threads is it's just Betamax. It's not going to go anywhere.
Just Betamax. Yeah. All right. Well, we're on Twitter or X or whatever that thing is called right now. It's at Caemeron CC. You got to spell it right. I'm at Cable Box Score. This podcast is located anywhere that you'd want to find them. We encourage you to give it a listen. Obviously, rate and review us. Give us the 5-star. Give us everything. Tell your friends. We appreciate you listening. Next week, we'll be back talking about Breaking Bad.
All right. Sounds good. See you next week, Ryan.
See you then.